Alright, so this is a 100 SPBL size 8, which they don't make anymore. So, a regular 100, regular Timco 100. And I've got a, excuse me, a strip of foam that's about as wide as the inside of the hook gap here. I hold that up. And this is,
What's that?
it's a size 8 hook, and this is 2 millimeter thin fly foam. So I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to poke the hook through it, ½ inch or so from the end, like that. I'll thread it onto the hook bend, and chuck him back up in my vise. I leave the long end, facing out the far side. It'll be kind of in the way a little bit here for a minute, but we'll work around that.
I'm sorry, how far back do you poke the hole?
From the end of the foam?
Yeah.
That far, ½ inch. Yeah, you'll see that's not going to make a huge difference. You want to have some length to it, but it's not going to make a huge difference. I'm going to start some 3/0 monocord here, just behind the hook eye. I'm going to make a nice thread base all the way back to the bend. And I'll run forward again. And I've got here just a scrap of foam that's about 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters, and I say about. I mean, I don't measure that. It's just kind of a quick cut. This is going to be a binder strip, so we've got something to glue to. I'll catch this behind the hook eye. I'm just going to spiral wrap back over it to the bend. This is going to give us some texture and a gluing surface, so we've got some surface area to the hook. So I'll just run back and forth and kind of cross-hatch that with the thread. When I first started tying this fly, I didn't do this step, and the fly comes out looking the same, but what you end up with is it'll start to slide on the hook. That thread base will slide underneath. This just gives us something to glue to. It makes the fly much more securely on the hook. I'm going to drag this piece of foam straight underneath the hook shank with my thread hanging at the bend here. The end of that binder strip is right at the last straight portion of the hook. I'm going to slide this piece of foam up right to the end of that binder strip, and see how that just elevated? So it's tilted up at an angle here. It's not down here where it's flat. If I slide it up on top of the bend, see how it's pointed up? That's important. You'll see here in a minute. My thread's still hanging back here at the bend. I'm going to come in and measure where my hook eye intersects and poke a hole through the foam. I'll go from both sides, just make sure I don't tear it, and I'll press the hook eye through that hole. Like that. So you see the hook eye and the hook bend sticking out, and that's what we've got on top. Angle off that. And you see where the thread's hanging, back here at the bend. Now I'm going to take some Zap-A-Gap, chunk of fuzz on there. I'm going to run a bead of Zap-A-Gap down that binder strip, down each side of the foam, and up off this extended piece. And the whole trick with the Zap-A-Gap is, less is better than more for sure. I'm going to use this scrap to kind of smear this around a little bit. If you get too much, it's much worse than if you have too little. Now I don't want to wait too long before doing this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold from the front to the back. I'm going to fold this piece of foam back, so I'm going to press it together at the front and kind of line everything up, and then when I get to the back, I'm going to lift this back end up. So I'm kind of curving it, gluing it into that curve. Just press everything together, so see how we just lock that curve in. And my thread's still hanging back here at the bend. I'm going to come around, and the reason I'm doing this quickly is if I wait too long, that glue will start to get hard. So I'm going to get back here at the bend. I'm going to make the first segment back here at the bend, 2 or 3 turns of thread, just like so. Then I'm going to cross the thread across the top of the fly. That'll show better for you. And I'm going to make fourths. I'm going to move about 1/4 of the way forward. We're going to make 3 bands of thread as we move forward, but you have to think in fourths because one piece is going to be left over at the end. So if you think in thirds, you end up all screwed up at the end. So about 1/4 of the way, make a segment, move it again. Turn that where you can see now. See where the thread crosses across the top? So all the crosses are on the top and the bottom is smooth. And I'll take a double-edged razor blade, and this is where this curve back here became important. Because I'm going to take, let me tuck it in here. See how that blade's flat across the top of the fly? That's the angle that this cut's going to go through. It's going to go straight back from where it is, which makes the body look like it's cut at an angle, but that cut is straight. So I'm going to just push this blade straight back through. You can see when I hold the two pieces together where that cut came from. So it's the foam that's curved, not the cut. I'm going to come in and just trim these. Let me turn it so you can see it here. See how this is a little wider than the rest of the body of the fly? I'm going to narrow that down so it's about the same width. Not to a point, but it is tapered. Like that. And then also see the head is a little wider than the rest of the fly. I'm going to just shave a little bit off each side here. So now everything's kind of the same width all the way through. From here it goes real easy. And really the whole thing is pretty easy. This is like a 2-3 minute fly. Not a whole lot of messing up, especially if you've got the pieces cut ahead of time. I'm going to take 2 strands of brown rubber legs. I'm going to use one on each side. This is just medium brown round rubber. I'm going to do my near side first so you won't be able to see this too well, but I'm going to catch it in this first segment with a couple of turns of thread. And then I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to cross the thread back to that second segment and catch it again. You can see what I've got there in the 2 spots. Do the same thing in reverse order on the far side. Couple turns there, cross it forward, catch it again. So we've got our little X legs out there. I'm going to trim these back legs just a touch longer than the body. And the front legs are just like maybe 2/3 the length of the front legs. Square everything up on the hook. Then I'm going to take, kind of depends on where I'm going to fish this fly. Typically I tie them with a pretty heavy deer hair wing. If you're fishing it just by itself, on a small stream kind of thing, you can go less hair on top of it. If you're fishing a couple droppers or fishing out of the boat, maybe a bigger clump of hair. So I'll vary the size of this clump of hair as far as how much is in it. A little bit kind of depending on the use that I have planned. I'm going to tie this. This is going to be a relatively heavy wing, so I've got a pretty good sized clump there. I'm going to thin this out. Or clean this out, just getting the underfur out of it. Put this in my stacker. So now I'm going to take this clump of hair, I'm going to measure it against the hook. Get that down where you can see it a little. I'm going to measure it against the hook so it's a hook length long. And what I'm measuring with is the back edge of my thumb here on the back side. That'll tell me where to cut it. So I've got to change hands now. Get that clump of hair. And in my case, this is a left-handed cut. If you're right-handed tire, this is okay. I'm going to cut that off so I've got the butt ends cut square in the end of my fingers. I'm going to set this on top. I'm going to put 2 turns over it. One right over the top of the other. I'm going to come in, I'm going to put my index finger against the far side of the hook here, and I'm going to draw straight down on the thread, and that'll flare that hair in place. Get that so it's all on the camera. And then I need my bigger whip finisher. Maybe I didn't bring it. Did I really not? There it is. And I'm going to whip finish right through these butt ends. You can see why I need the bigger whip finisher here. I just got to get around the front of the fly here. So I'm going to go right through these butt ends, 2 or 3 turns. Pull that down, you can see I can cinch that down inside that hair again. Then come in and trim that thread off. One hair I don't like there. Oh, I don't have a Sharpie, so I'll use this. Usually I use Sharpie here, but I do always draw eyes on them. Because so that's him. Lower him just a little bit. Get him on the
Could you
camera.
use a darker foam?
Absolutely. I tied in black also, olive yellow, tan, black. I've tied a bunch of red ones last year. I fished red ones a bunch last year, and just kind of as a tractor kind of thing. And they ate that surprisingly well. I've tied them in pink. I've tied them in about every color foam comes in. And they've all worked at one time or another. Tan's probably still what I fish the most, though.
And can you also tie it on the same hook that you use for stimulator?
On a 200R, the catch with the 200R is this piece of foam is so thick, and part of it's under the hook, so it's in the hook gap. You're going to fill up the hook gap on that 200R pretty quick. So I wouldn't recommend that. That's specifically why I've gone to this hook. You can see even with that foam in there, there's still a lot of hook gap left. so you can get the fish hooked. The baby boy hopper that I do, like if you size this down to a size 14, you know, it's still the same piece of foam. It's still 2 millimeters wide, and the hook gap just gets narrower. You can make the fly shorter easy enough, but you start to narrow the hook gap down. So that's where you'll go to like a 24.99, which is a short shank hook with a wide gap. So you get a shorter fly, but you still have that hook gap maintained.
What kind of hair was that, Charlie?
This is just deer, just natural white-tailed deer is what this is.